Hello there. Welcome to this video. And on this video, I'm going to be going through the 10 most pointless bands of all time, in my opinion. What have I got a light on here for? What have I got a light on here for? Don't want the light on. What's the light on for? How do I switch the light off? Oh my God. Sorry about this, everybody. How do you switch the light off? I don't want the light on. Oh, what a bleak day it is today. I've come down my studio and I've had to put all my lights on. It's all dark. The summer's over and we're going into the horrible grind down to Christmas. I hate this time of year. All bleak, Halloween, and then bloody bonfire night and all that bit, Guy Fawkes and all that, and Spark. Oh, I hate it all. And then we've all got to try and get all that money together to do Christmas again. And when you get to my age, it's like Christmas is just coming around like this, like this, like this. So I'm not in a good mood. Right, so I've come in here, I've sat down, I thought, what shall I do? And I've got to vent my frustration at my life and the seasonal situation in which I find myself. And so I thought, let's just do the 10 most pointless bands. I've done the 10 most overrated bands. I've done the 10 bands that did the most damage to the music industry. But there are just bands out there that I think, what is the point of them? If they didn't exist, would it really matter? Right? So, like, I'm not a big Kiss fan, right? And I know a lot of you aren't a big Kiss fan. But they're not pointless. They represent something in the history of music. They're that metal band or heavy rock band that's got the makeup on and the over-the-top shows, and they represent something. Velvet Underground represents something. These are bands that represent something, right, whether you like them or not. But these are just pointless, right? You ever see that film called Yesterday, where he wakes up in a world where the Beatles don't exist anymore and only he knows about them? All right, and you start to realise all the things that the Beatles did for us, you know. These are the opposite of that. These are the ones who just, for some reason, have got traction in the history of music, and you'll know all these bands, I hope. But why are they there? So I'm going to start at number 10 with the archetypal band for this, and that band is Bush. Now, when I come on here and talk about jazz, fusion and prog, I know what I'm talking about. And then when I start talking about these bands I don't like, I don't know what I'm talking about. Can I give you any information about Bush? No, I can't. If there's Bush fans out there and I say something, I'm probably going to get the facts wrong. But doesn't that just tell you something? This is one of the biggest selling bands to come out of the UK in the 90s. Not Oasis, not Blur, not Radiohead, bloody Bush. And what Bush are is almost like a contrived version of a grunge band, right? They've got a nice, good-looking singer. They do all the right poses. There's a whole ton of these, right? And there's some bands that I could have picked on. What was it? Nickelback and all these bands that people really hate. But the fact that they are so hated means that they occupy something in our culture, right? A band that's really hated, when people point, like, I can't stand that band, right? I think they have a point. They have a point. And their point is to be hated. All right? But Bush, who the hell are Bush? I'll tell you who they are. They're rich people. They've came out, sold a ton of records, right? They made a ton of money. They've never committed suicide or had any drug problems or gone to prison or done anything like that, because they were sensible young men who did the right thing. A little bit like accountants doing grunge. That's what we've got here. And I am now at the limit of what I know about Bush. I've said everything that I can say about them. They are just a nondescript band, right? Who even mentions them nowadays? But at the time, they were a band. They were on MTV all the time. What is the point in Bush? Right, now that's a safe bet. I'm sure everybody now understands with my example at number 10 of a pointless band. And we're going to be looking at another 9. And these are basically bands that They haven't even got on my nerves. In fact, there's a couple on here I actually quite like and I own albums by, but they're still pretty pointless. Right, at number 9, I have that behemoth of the 1980s, Simple Minds. Now, what are Simple Minds about, okay? Everybody loved them in the 80s. They sold loads of records, right? They weren't The Cure. They weren't the Smiths. They weren't the Sisters of Mercy. They weren't even Echo and the Bunnymen, which to me seemed like a slightly pointless version of The Cure, right? They were sort of almost like stadium indie rock, okay? Now, they got Mel Gaynor, who was a bloody brilliant drummer. I loved his drumming in Simple Minds, right? But I never understood what the attraction of that band was. I'm trying to think of a record by them. I can hear one just about in my head. But all I can hear is In the Name of Love by U2. Because to me, Simple Minds were like another version of U2. Now, they're so huge that there's probably going to be people watching this that actually like them, but they're going to get all steamed up. But to me, they were bland. There was nothing great about them except for the drumming. Now, there was another band at that time called Big Country. And Big Country had got a thing about them. They weren't just like an 80s band. Big Country had this sort of Scottish jumping around thing and the incredible drumming of Mark Brzezicki. And the guy that sang for them was Stuart Amundsen. He was a pretty intense guy. And I do believe he was a troubled man and then ended up committing suicide. But nothing like that happened in Simple Minds. Well, maybe he didn't. I don't know. Who's the lead singer? Jim Kerr. Didn't he go out with Chrissy Hynde? That's the sort of thing they did. I thought this was going to be an easy video, but actually, there's nothing to say about Simple Minds. I can't even find anything to say that's funny about them because they're just so bland, aren't they? Shall I move on? Hopefully, as we get into this, there's going to be more comedy here, but the first two haven't elicited much comedy. I've tried my best. But if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I think we're going to get some with the next guy, though. At number 8, I have put Lenny Kravitz. Lenny Kravitz is like, what is he? He's like, is he like Prince, Terence Trent D'Arby? What is he? You know. Now, the thing with Lenny Kravitz is, right, and this is why I think he gets on my nerves. He's obviously one of these people that was born into some connected family that were already part of the industry, okay? Now, this has become de rigueur nowadays, but Lenny Kravitz is a really good example of this, okay? He's born into this thing, and his mom's really good looking, and his daddy's rich, you know. What's a song, isn't it? And so they produce this beautiful man. And Lenny Kravitz emerges, and he's this beautiful man, and he's got the dreadlocks, and he brings that first album out, and it's a sort of funky, rocky mixture that sort of Prince has explored. It's all right. I quite liked it. I went and bought that album. Okay, I think what was the hit record of that? I can't remember. Right, then he comes out with this massive album. It's all over MTV with Are You Gonna Go My Way on it and all that type of stuff. And it's all sort of, what is it? Is it rock? Is it funk? It's just a bland example of all of them mixed together. And he gets absolutely everywhere. Now, if that was it, that would be fine. Okay? That would be fine. 30 years ago, if that had been it, and that was it, that would be fine. But Kravitz is still around. He's still here. And most annoyingly, he's older than me and he looks bloody amazing, right? And he had a record out a few months ago, last year or something, and I checked the video and he's writhing about in a sexual manner, which a man of 60 years old should not be doing. But he annoyingly gets away with it. And the song was actually, I quite liked it. You know, if you take probably his most famous song, which is that song that went to #1 here in the UK, and it goes, I want to get away, I want to get away, I want to fly. You know that one? With that bass line. It's cool. I like it. I actually like Kravitz. I like Kravitz. But I know that it's the most bland, nondescript music you could ever come across. There's no rough edges. It's just the product of Kravitz. And nothing goes wrong for Kravitz, does it? Nothing. Right? He's got everything going for him. Right? Now, I do have a Kravitz story. And my Kravitz story is, I don't know if I should tell this Kravitz story. It's not that good. I am not going to tell the Kravitz story about when Lenny Kravitz visited Kidderminster in his big tour bus and met up with the comedian Frank Carson. This probably didn't even happen anyway. I'm probably just making up this story just to make Kravitz seem a lot more interesting. But I think the real thing, as I'm talking through this, I think he's too handsome and too cool, and it gets on my nerves, and we need to draw attention to the fact that he makes bland music that I actually quite like. He's almost in the same bracket as Jamiroquai, another band I absolutely love. But Jamiroquai do seem to represent the corner of some sort of the market. And JK is genuinely annoying. Kravitz isn't even annoying. This is the problem I'm going to have. All we can do is respect Kravitz, really. Let's move on. This is going to upset everybody. On number 7, I have the progressive rock band Camel. Right? So if you got all the British progressive rock bands, right? If you got all the British progressive rock, you got Yes, King Crimson, a bit of Gentle Giant, a bit of Pink Floyd, you know, you mixed them all up, you would have a froth of individuality floating on the top of that mixture. You'd have John Anderson's voice bubbling around with Bill Bruford's incredible snare drum sound. You'd have Keith Emerson there with his great big synthesizer stabbing it. You'd have Robert Fripp sit there with his angular guitar tones and his little round glasses and the light on the top of his head. And if you just scooped all those off and you poured those out and you were just left with the generic prog that is now slopped in the bottom of this big cauldron of pretentiousness, you would have Camel. Camel are like, if you had a film and you wanted to create a prog band for that film, you would create Camel. Their name is indistinct and boring. Their albums are like that. They're soft and fluffy and easy listening, right? They are easy listening prog. Andy Latimer's got a beautiful guitar tone, and he does these wonderful guitar solos that are very emotional. Put him in the same bracket as Dave Gilmour, but they're not like Pink Floyd because they ain't got Roger Waters singing about death, right? You know, they sing about bloody snow gooses. Or snow geese. Well, they actually sing about one snow goose, and it's just called Snow Goose. And I have tried to like this band, and then on top of that, once they get to the 1980s, they just bland out, and they don't go away. They're still there now. They're still going, and progressive rock fans love them. And they think they're wonderful. And the type of progressive rock fan that likes Camel is the type of progressive rock fan that cannot stand anybody pushing the envelope of progressive rock. They are the prog Nazis. They're the prog gatekeepers that will come along and go, that's not prog. Rush aren't prog. Pink Floyd aren't prog. What about Camel? Oh, Camel are prog. Oh, lovely. Andy Latimer's lovely guitar solos. And so that is how I feel about Camel. I've listened to them loads, right? If I had a Camel album and I put it on in the car, I wouldn't hate it because I like prog. You know, they noodle away, tasteful drumming, some nice, you know, Moogie synthesizers going on. Andy Latimer's lovely things, a bit of conceptuality, tracks drag on for too long. You know, they do all the stuff that we love about prog. But we don't need them, right? If we woke up tomorrow and Camel weren't there, they are the archetype of what I'm talking about. If Camel disappeared, I don't think anyone would know. Maybe some of the members. Right, I'm going to move on now. At number 6, I have David Gray. Now, do you remember David Gray? Do you remember David Gray? The one with the annoying voice that used to do that with his head when he sung? You know that singer-songwriter bloke, David Gray? He was around about 2000, he was around, 20 years ago. Now, he represents, I've got two of these on this list, he represents, for me, the idea of these people that emerge, sell a ton of records, everyone thinks they're great, but they're not great, and then they go away and never anyone mentions them again. And these guys make a ton of money, and they're not really in it. I don't feel like they're proper musicians that are cursed by creativity. So they never really do anything after that. They just go off, sit in their mansion, you know, and get loads of takeaways and drive around on their, you know, lawnmower thing that they can drive and mow their big lawn. That's what they do. They're happy. Now, David Gray, right? Can you remember him? Right? Can you remember David Gray? David Gray has sold 12 million albums. That's how massive he was. Now, the reason he's got on my list is because I have a story attached to David Gray, and I can tell this one, unlike the Lenny Kravitz story that I realised I couldn't tell when I got to it. Right, so in 2000, which is the only reason why I know why David Gray was around in 2000, because in 2000, I played at Glastonbury with Robert Plant, right? And Robert Plant didn't want anybody to see this, so he put a TV ban on it. I don't think he was completely confident in us or what we were doing, so he wouldn't let anybody film it. And this made it very special at the time. Everybody wanted to come and see Robert Plant. What's he doing? He stopped doing Page and Plant. He's got this weird band with me on drums in. And so when we arrived at Glastonbury, it was electric. It was such a feeling. And out in the front row was all the famous people. They'd all come to see us, right? When we got there, we got there very early, and I decided to go for a wander around Glastonbury. So I got all my stage clothes, I could look all smart, and I leave the lovely enclosure at the back for the artists and venture out into the muddy outlands of Glastonbury as it was back then before it got all corporatised. It was on the way to getting corporatised. And I can remember it was on the way to get corporatised because after this gig, we did a gig in Frome, and this bloke came backstage who was obviously a friend with Roberts, and one of the members of the band who remained nameless turned around to this bloke and said, "Who are you, mate?" And he says, "Oh, mate, of Roberts." I said, "Where you come from?" He goes, "I come from Glastonbury." "Oh, so, you know, Glastonbury Festival's gone a bit downhill, hasn't it? It's got used to be all good, loads of hippies and Gong and Orquin playing, and it was proper hippie festival. Now it's got all commercialised." Not realising it was that Michael Eaves bloke that actually owns the festival. So it was an embarrassing situation, to say the least. But that came after. So there we are at Glastonbury, and I walk out into the backstage area, and I remember in the backstage area, there was Boris Johnson. And Boris Johnson didn't come to talk to me, but he came to talk with a couple of guys, and maybe Robert was with me. And with Boris Johnson was a completely naked man. Now, the fact that I have such a vivid memory of this, maybe I'm not remembering it quite right. But I can remember this as called Boris Johnson and a Naked Man, I remember. But apparently, we went out and looked at some bands, okay? Now, I remember going to watch Nitin Sawhney doing his sort of, you know, Indian, you know, hip-hop-y, multicultural fusions, which was great. I then went to watch Moloko, and they were great. But these were all on the little stages. But apparently, me and some other people ventured down to the big main stage, and we watched David Gray. We watched the whole gig. I've even gone on YouTube and found the gig, and I have no recollection of this whatsoever. But I do remember looking at the big stage. I do remember being in the audience, but I have no memory whatsoever of David Gray's music or him or anything about it whatsoever. Right? This, for me, qualifies David Gray as being absolutely pointless, and he represents a certain singer-songwriter type, which has now become even more common. I went last night to the shop with my daughter to get my nightly chocolate milk and a Yorkie bar, which I always like to finish the night off. However good the day's gone, that's always a nice ending to the night. And I picked that up, and as I went into the Nissa or whatever it was, playing on the radio in there was Shotgun by George Ezra. Now, how the hell did George Ezra get a deal? How did he have all those hit records? Why did everyone play him? And why is he now completely gone? Where has he gone? You know, did anyone expect him to stick? He's not even on the list. George Ezra. Bloody hell, what's happened to him? Why do we have to put up with these non-entities? Why do you have to put up with his blandness? Right? And then once you've invested in something, you can't help but invest in it. You know, what do you think of George Ezra? Have you heard Shotgun? I think it's quite catchy. I think it's terrible. Don't you like his low, mellifluous voice? Not really, no. I'll be ready, shotgun. You know, he looks like some son of a wealthy, you know, hedge fund manager that's giving his kid a record deal for Christmas. And I feel that David Gray, I'm not saying he's the son of a hedge fund, I don't know. He probably got there with his songwriting. But he paved the way for a whole bunch of people. What about bloody Damien Rice, remember? You know, and what about, you got Badly Drawn Boy. The Badly Drawn Boy and Damien Rice, they're not my thing, but they're not pointless. That's the difference. David Gray's pointless. And there's someone else that came in after him. But the trouble is, it's even hard for me to keep with my memory to hold on to who these people are. They come, they sell a ton of records, and then they go, James Blunt. James Blunt's not on the list because he's funny on the internet, on Twitter. He is a funny man, and he was in the army, and I'm not going to mess with anybody in the army. Because although James Blunt seems nice, I'm pretty sure he could kill me if he wanted. At number 5... I've got Primal Scream, right? What the hell are they about? Now, you probably know them in the 90s of that sort of Rolling Stones post-rave band that had one hit record, and I can't remember what it is, but it was pretty naff, right? Now, years before, when I was at art college, all my friends were into indie bands. They were into The Mission, Sisters of Mercy, and all this type of thing, right? And I went up to stay with some friends up at Hull University, and playing in their Union Bar was this new band that had been formed out of the Sisters of Mercy or The Mission. I can't remember who it was, right? And there was a photograph of the lead singer of Primal Scream everywhere, photocopies of him everywhere. So we're walking around, they go, and everyone's going, oh, that's a guy from The Mission, I think it was. And The Mission were all right. They were a bit of a sort of cut down Sisters of Mercy, you know, but they were all right. And so let's go and see them play live then. So we went down to the local Union Bar, and I watched Primal Scream right early on in their career, and it was rammed. Everyone was there to see them. It was so bland and rubbish, and they were so rubbish that the only thing I could do really was to get drunk. Now, I don't drink now. I'm a teetotal man now. I've been teetotal, actually, for 15 years. I've been teetotal. But maybe if I was stuck back in a Primal Scream gig again, maybe I would, you know, eventually, despite my willpower, have to go back to the bottle. And that's what I did. And I got very drunk. But even though I was drunk out of my mind, I could still hear how awful this band was. It was truly awful. And I got angry. And the alcohol had given me Dutch courage. And I remember walking down, pushing my way through the audience, getting to the front of the stage, and standing on getting to the side of the stage, which you could stand on, not on the stage, but on the side of the stage, looking at them and shouting at them. And I'll take the swearing out, but I was shouting, "You are not very good," or words to that effect. And I can remember doing that and then being sick. Now, I don't know if these guys remember this going on, but Primal Scream really stuck in my mind. And I thought, this band's never going to make it. They're never going to have a hit record. They're absolute rubbish. And then a few years later, there they appear on MTV. They've changed their style. They've ripped the Rolling Stones. Get Your Rocks Off. That's the one. Get Your Rocks Off. It sounds like a bad AC/DC title. Get Your Rocks Off. Absolute pointless. Why did we have to have Primal Scream for? Spitting. When I get angry, I start salivating like a hound. And that's when you start seeing the spit flying. And I've got these lights up now, so they're probably floating across like sort of orbs. And the more spiritual we go, that place is haunted where Andy goes. Have you seen all the orbs? Now it starts my spit. I'm getting angry now because we're now at number 4. And at number 4, I have Jack Johnson. Jack bloody Johnson. Right, now let's get this straight. We're not talking about the incredible black boxer, right, that took on the white man in America and punched him right in the face. Jack Johnson that didn't give a toss, right, that inspired the album that creates jazz fusion. Jack Johnson by Miles Davis. We're not talking about that. Even that bloke's called Jack Johnson. Now, if I was called Jack Johnson and I was going to do a record, I'd go, I can't go by my name because A, there's the boxer, and B, there's the incredible Miles Davis album called Jack Johnson. But this bloke doesn't know about it, does he? He doesn't know about Jack Johnson, the album. He doesn't know about the boxer. He doesn't know about anything because he's not in that world. He's in a middle of the road world where he's going to sit there and make this jolly, nice, acoustic, bouncy music, right? And he's going to be there and do that all happy in himself, going... And a bit like George Ezra, they all go down the same thing, right? Now, I wouldn't mind it, but this bloke, Jack Johnson, has sold 25 million albums. King Crimson have sold 1 million albums. Jack Johnson's sold 25 times more albums than King Crimson. Right? What the hell's going on? Right? Why are people duped like him? He seems like a nice guy. He writes nice songs. Right? And this is... It's just so bland, and it's got nothing. There's nothing wrong in making housewife albums, right? There's nothing wrong with it, right? Simply Red did it, didn't they? I got Simply Red mixed up with Simple Minds then. Simply Red did it, but the thing about Simply Red is, right? They may make bland middle of the road housewife music, but they got Mick Hucknall. And Mick Hucknall is annoying, isn't he? He's annoying. He gets on your nerves. He's a twat, as we say here in the UK. And he's ginger, right? Nothing wrong with gingers. I've said this over and over again. My dad was ginger, and I liked him very much. I have no prejudice against the gingers, right? And gingers have probably got a bad name because of Mick bloody Hucknall. And that stops them from being pointless because, you know, with Simply Red, you know, it's crap bland music, but you got Mick Hucknall to focus on. Jack Johnson seems like a nice guy. He's like sort of, you come round your house, he'd be friendly and nice. You know, how are you doing, Andy? You okay? I'm Jack Johnson. You want me to play you a nice little song? No, please don't, Jack. Okay, then. Is he needing any money? Because I've got vast amounts of money because of all the albums I sold. You know, doesn't he live in Hawaii, right? Doesn't he live in Hawaii? I mean, isn't that okay? You know, Hawaii's a nice place to live, especially if you're a millionaire. Isn't the Facebook bloke making his city that he's going to, you know, when the elites destroy Western civilization, it goes down the pan. Isn't he going to go and live underground in Hawaii with all these slaves that will look after him? Isn't that what's going to, I bet Jack Johnson will be down there. And Jack Johnson will be there, you know, saying to him, who is it? I can't even remember the name of the bloke who owns Facebook. Zuckerberg will go down there and he go, oh, Jack, I forgot you were coming down there. Say, well, you'll need a bit of entertainment, won't you? And Zuckerberg, that seems relatively mild-mannered, within about 3 years will be killing him, but it won't matter because he'll be locked away in his underground kingdom where he has become king and he can act in atrocious ways. And in a way, I hope that does happen to Jack Johnson. At number 3, I have the Stereophonics, that Welsh rock band, right? Not Manic Street Preachers, Stereophonics. Not Goldie Looking Chain, Stereophonics. With that bloke Kelly Rowland singing. You know, has there ever been more of a definition of blandness than the Stereophonics? Now, I hate to mention it again, but when I was playing with Rock Plants, we played somewhere in South Wales, can't remember it was a big gig, and Stereophonics came to watch us play. Now, I might have met them, but I cannot remember. If I was introduced to them, they didn't stick out enough for me. This also happened with Counting Crows as well. I didn't realise who they were, and I didn't realise who Stereophonics were, right? Now, yes, they're bland. They've got nothing going. They haven't got a great guitar player. The singer sings in quite good singing, but it's very generic. They sing standard rock music. They don't protest. They don't push the envelope. They don't do anything that would offend at all in any way. And they're Welsh as well, on top of that. And that they're South Wales, from South Wales. That just winds it up a little bit for me, you know. So anyway, forgetting going down that Welsh route, Stereophonics. So a few years back, I got invited down to a Zildjian event, and it was happening in some big rehearsals, posh rehearsals in London. And I went down with my mate. He drove me down because I don't like driving, and I don't like driving on my own. So my mate, Martin, drove me down. And when I got there, by the time I got there, I needed to go to the toilet. And it wasn't a stand-up go to the toilet. It was a sit-down one, okay? As we say in the UK, a number 2. And I really needed a number 2. So we get into the rehearsal room, and I go looking for a toilet, and I can't find. Now, these are posh rehearsal rooms. And in a posh rehearsal room, you don't just have the rehearsal room, but you have the kitchen and toilet. So I thought, I'm going to go into one of these rehearsal rooms and do a poo. Sorry, a number 2. So I go into one, and lo and behold, you will not believe who's rehearsing in there. It's bloody Stereophonics. And they're sat there strumming away on acoustic guitars. They don't notice me walk through their rehearsal room in the corner and zip round into their kitchen and into their toilet, sit down and lock the door. Right, I'm just about to do my doings when my mobile phone goes off. And it's a phone number. It says, and I thought, well, I'm Zildjian, I better answer it. And it's one of those ones, you know, where you can't see who's phoning you up. So I go there. And as I put it to my ear, it goes. I'll just put it back in my pocket and sit down to do exactly the same. This keeps happening. Every time I sit down, the phone goes off. Every time I put it to my ear, it goes. And eventually, I think I'm going to ignore this. I don't care whether it's a dodgy call. I don't care. I'm in London. I'm in Stereophonics toilet. They don't know I'm in here. If they find out, I'm going to be in trouble with Stereophonics. And I don't want to get in trouble with them, even though I think they're bland. I'll probably lose my temper. And I'll be going, who are you to tell me where I can go to the toilet? You're bland. You're the most blandest band from Wales that's ever come out of Wales. And that's saying something. Right? So I ignore the call. I do my doings. Trousers up, and I go back out, and I say to my mate Martin, I said, oh, you're not going to believe that. Well, Stereophonics in there, and I had to go to the toilet in there. I hope they don't go in quite soon. You know, they should leave it for a little bit. Anyway, and I said, but the weird thing was, every time I sat down, my phone was going off. And then Martin turned round to me and said, yeah, it was almost as though somebody knew you were going to the toilet, and then laughed to himself and walked off. And I thought, what does he mean by that? And I still to this day don't know what he meant by that. And I'd love to know who's calling me up. I mean, that could have been an important call. Anyway, shall we move on to number 2? I didn't know whether to put this band on because I think they do represent something in the music industry. Right? And I have a love-hate relationship, which is why I put them at number 2. So this is to open this up for discussion. But the pointless band I have at number 2 is Motley Crue. Right? First album's quite good. But after that, don't they just become the archetypal 80s hair metal band? And don't you feel that they never really develop anything that is truly their own, except for the fact that they're idiots and they do all these terrible things. They become the archetypal party band and they do all these things, drugs, groupies, the whole lot. That is what Motley Crue are. And not only that, they've done all that, and then they've come out of that, and then they wrote the book The Dirt, and then they signed it up for... And they've made money about all this stuff, right? And when you go back to the albums, aren't they just pointless? Aren't they just really pointless? Weren't a lot of those hair metal bands pointless, really? I mean, couldn't we lose Winger or Poison? Right? Did we really need any of this? Weren't they just like a boil on the face of heavy rock? Really? There were some great ones. There were some really, there were some great bands at that time, but they were great because they had good guitarists and good musicians, and they pumped a little bit of excitement into it. Mick Mars isn't a bad guitarist. He's probably the best musician in that band, right? Vince Neil has got an annoying voice. It's squeaky and gets on my nerves. Tommy Lee is a drum hero. He's quite cool, but he did do that video with Pamela Anderson, didn't he? I mean, the whole thing is just, and although it seemed quite salacious at the time, doesn't it seem all very dodgy now? Wouldn't it be better if Motley Crue, rather than making millions out of the fact that they behaved in this way, was sort of just, banished to the mists of time? Wouldn't that be better for us all, right? Rather than watching them going out, and looking half dead and walking around trying to squeeze the last bit of money out of this brand, because that's pretty much what they are, a brand. I don't know. I'm throwing this out there. I've got a love-hate relationship. The album Dr. Feelgood, which seemed to me to be a big rip-off of Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, when that came out, the first track, Dr. Feelgood, is amazing. And I remember putting that, I thought, oh my, they've finally done it. They've got past that girls nonsense, and they've done a real killer riff, and it was absolutely brilliant. And then the side one kicked in, then Kickstart Your Heart comes on, brilliant. Then that album just blands out like the rest of them. Then they lose their way. And then on top of that, in the 90s, Tommy Lee, he starts to explore nu metal. Now, I like nu metal. I like Limp Bizkit. I don't care what you say. Limp Bizkit might be terrible in every single way, but they can come up with a riff. Rolling's got the hell of a riff. I'm a sucker for a riff. And Tommy Lee did an album called Methods of Mayhem. And I bought that album, and in terms of nu metal and all those bands that represent that sort of element just before it went all punky, I think that Methods of Mayhem is the greatest nu metal album of all time. It just kicks. Because Tommy Lee's got the money and he's brought in the best producers. He's got loads of guest rappers on there. I think Lil' Kim's on there. It's just bloody brilliant. Go and check out Methods of Mayhem. Right? But it doesn't take away how bland Motley Crue are. Right, so we've got to number one. Okay, now I've mentioned this band before, and I'm going to mention them again. And they're sort of in the news, so I'm bringing them in at number one because they're definitely the most pointless band of all time. And that is, of course, the Foo Fighters. The Foo Fighters is the big exclamation mark at the end of the word heavy rock. Heavy rock starts off as an incredible countercultural movement. Right, the bands in America that came out of the garage scene, like MC5 and all those bands, they represented something on the edge culturally. Here in the UK, after the blues boom, we get Black Sabbath coming, and they really nail it. Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, especially Black Sabbath, and this is countercultural. It all softens up a bit in the 70s, but then punk comes out and you get a new wave of British heavy metal. You get Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Diamond Head, and we're back in business. Absolutely brilliant, right? And then that sort of splits in the 1980s, and you go down the thrash metal thing with Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, all bloody brilliant. and then you go down that Motley Crue route, right? Horrible, okay? And that comes along, and there's so much coming out of that, and it's all very exciting, isn't it? It's all very exciting. And in America, that hair metal thing, the bubble bursts, and what we get is this explosion of bands, you know, Anthrax, you know, playing with Public Enemy. You get like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Fishbone, but you also get Alice in Chains, you get Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, and you get Nirvana. And Nirvana seem to wrap it all up. They have the heaviness of Black Sabbath, the almost progginess of King Crimson at their heaviest. They have the sort of 80s American punk bands. They swill that all in with some great songwriting. And this album sells 30 million copies, and it's the end of rock. It's rock getting to that point. You can't go further than it. You can't go, you can only go backwards. You can go heavier, or you can go more poppy, but you can't get past Nirvana. Nirvana is the end of rock, right? Kurt Cobain dies. Chris Novoselic, or whatever his name is, does the right thing, possibly because he's going bald and he knows he hasn't got a future in rock music if you're going bald. So he then decides to just take his vast wealth and go off and do whatever he wants. But not Dave Grohl, the Max Bygraves of rock and roll, right? Now, he's going to form a band, and he's going to take every little bit of edge and danger and punkiness that was in Nirvana, and he's going to eradicate that. And he is going to take what Nirvana did and turn it into the most middle-of-the-road dad rock you could ever have. He's going to blend out everything about rock music, and he's going to wave the flag of this so that he now represents rock music and live music. And if there's anyone going to be talking about Rush or Led Zeppelin or Black Sabbath or Queen, you know it'll be Dave Grohl coming out. He's like a nice, chummy guy. He's a lovely guy. Dave Grohl's a nice guy. Not like Kurt Cobain, all weird and mad, right? He's a nice guy, and everyone loves Kurt Cobain. You want him to come around your house, right? You want him to, you know, come around. Oh, hello, Dave. How are you, mate? I'm really great, mate. Do you want to come play some rock and roll with me? You can play a little bit of Led Zeppelin. I can play it all, you know. I play the drums and the guitar, and I can do everything. And I'm this multi-instrumentalist, brilliant guy, but I'm chummy and I'm down to earth. You know, that's what Dave Grohl. And you've had them there now for like 25 years, plugging away with their albums. You know, they have their hits, they do their gigs, everybody turns up, every generation, father and son, mother and daughter, all they are, the Foo Fighters, you know. Oh, don't we love them? And then Taylor Hawkins is the only other guy in the band that had any charisma, because the rest of them, who are they? Right, they seem to have about 8 guitarists in there, you know. And what do they need all these people playing guitar? They're the most bland people on the world. I can't tell you what they look like. I can't tell you what hair colour they've got. Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl out front, Taylor Hawkins, right? And Taylor Hawkins is on everything, and he's a nice chummy guy, and he's got the moustache like that, and he's into his Queen and all that type of stuff. But then we find out that Taylor Hawkins has got a drug problem. And before we know it, he drops down dead. Now, that gave the Foo Fighters a little bit of edge. It's not the best way to get some edge, but it did. They come in and do this big benefit concert, and this almost like strengthens their reputation. The Foo Fighters, oh, wasn't it terrible? The poor old Taylor Hawkins has got his own problems, and it's such terrible. And we've all got to be aware of that, you know. And they've carried on. Nothing could touch them. Nobody said, oh, you know, I don't like this. He's a drug addict, and, you know, he's died, he got kids, you know, why did he, you know, couldn't he have pulled himself together for his family and all that type of stuff? And then now, and I haven't talked about this, now Dave Grohl's been caught literally with his pants down. He's admitted he's had a child outside of marriage. This is awful, right? Dave Grohl, the lead singer of a rock band, has found to actually have had sex with someone that wasn't his wife. Now, I am not condoning it, and I don't want you to condone it. I don't want anybody to condone it. It's morally wrong to do such a thing, right? And he should be shamed in every way possible for transgressing our moral code of committing adultery on his lovely wife, who's only lovely, in my opinion, and our opinion, because he's married to the wonderful Dave Grohl, who's now besmirched his image as being the Max Bygraves of rock. Now what is he? A philanderer, an adulterer. That's what Dave Grohl is, and no one's happy about it whatsoever. Now, right, I don't condone this behaviour. I think it's terrible and awful. I wouldn't do such a thing to my wife ever in a million years. And if she is watching this, you know, I'm not condoning adultery whatsoever. Not in one way, shape or form am I doing such a thing. It's an awful thing to do. A terrible thing to do for your wife. I mean, Moses comes down. Think about it. Moses comes down from the bloody mountain with those 2 bits of concrete on it. And he's written down what God said is wrong. You know, you're not going to steal. Don't kill anybody. Don't be looking after your neighbour's donkey and thinking you want it, you know, and coveting it. And don't go committing adultery. It's one of the 10 Commandments, Dave Grohl. Have you not read the Bible? But the point is here. So I hope you realise that I do not morally condone such behaviour. I won't go back into that again. But don't you think it's a bit much? That we're living in a world where this stadium-filling rock band is making the news because their lead singer had sex outside marriage. Isn't that what I mean by the exclamation mark that is at the end of the story of rock? The Foo Fighters. There, you think they're championing live bands, you think they're championing real rock music. They're not. They're the symptom of the end of rock music. They are the symbol, of the end of rock music, which means they're the symbol of the end of Western civilization and all the values. And what are values in Western civilization? I tell you what they are. It's that. That's our values. That's what makes Western civilization great. Not giving a bloody toss. I've sat here, an old man, chatting to another old man on this site, same age as me, actually slightly younger. And we have gone through what it was like when we were at school. And we have been laughing our heads off because when we were at school, there was no health and safety. There was no political correctness. And we got up to all sorts of jolly japes as our teachers tried to persecute us with their sadist ways. All ex-army types that just wanted to, like, you know, basically cane you or put your head in a bin. And we found that very funny. It made men of us, right? And alongside that, in the 70s and 80s, when the 70s when I was growing up, the soundtrack to that was bloody Pink Floyd. We don't need any education. It was Alice Cooper, School's Out. You know, that's where we come from. That represents Western civilization, liberal Western civilization. But we've all got so mealy-mouthed, we've all got so, like, sensitive and whatever, right, that now we're turning on ourselves and we're criticising the very thing. All these middle-class, educated, arty types, all my friends, because that's what I am. All they're arguing, oh, imperialism's terrible, systemic racism's terrible, it's all really terrible, that's a hate crime, you've transgressed, that's violence when you say that. All this stuff's going on, and what ends up is that Dave Grohl has a bit of nookie, as we used to say in the 70s, with someone he's not married to, otherwise out on tour, ends up having a baby with her. That baby's got it made. Bloody hell. You know, they will never have to work. They'll never have to work, that child will. They'll be lavished with all sorts of things, right? Because he's admitted to it. You know, most of these singers that I won't mention, right, how many have they admitted to? They're all over the bloody place, right? All on the payroll, right? And we live in a bloody culture that points to that and go, oh, isn't it terrible? I don't know if I like Dave Grohl anymore. Where's this gone? Foo Fighters bloody represent everything that is wrong with Western culture. And until we can start standing up and being proud of who we are, and all you middle-class types that think I'm wrong, right? All you, I ain't going to argue with you, right? You got a perfect right to get offended by everything and think everybody should be nice and that nice is more important than, you know, actually working out what's best for the world, right? If you're one of those types, okay, fair enough, right? If you don't like Western civilization, liberal democracy, full of its tolerance and, you know, allowing people to have freedom of speech, freedom of expression, think their own ideas, whether they're good or bad, and have a great big tussle, and you're allowed to make the your life as what it is and nobody tells you what to do. Like watching the embodiment of rock and roll. If you want to, you can buy a Harley Davidson like Easy Rider and head out, you know, with your eyes on the horizon, you know, a wild-eyed outsider riding toward the gates of hell, right? You could do all that in the West if you want. The Foo Fighters have ruined it. They trade on it, but they have ruined it. Okay? And if you don't agree with me, and you've got a perfect right to agree with me, then please, if you don't like it in Western liberal democracy here, there's loads of other countries you could go and live in. There's Venezuela, there's China, there's Russia, there's even North Korea. North Korea, the Democratic Republic of North Korea. Right, go over there and go and live there. And I promise you, they don't have any proper rock in North Korea. But the Foo Fighters, if you were going to put one band on in North Korea, it would be the Foo Fighters. They would go down like a storm, wouldn't they? Oh, what a rant. This is what happens at this time of the year when it goes dark. If you look at my videos, you'll notice the silly ones are all through this early winter period. That's always what happens. Then I get through Christmas, all these silly videos. Then I come out of Christmas reinvigorated. I can see the future. I can see the dawning lights of the spring and summer coming up. And I hit it. And that's where I have all my big view videos. That's where it happens. Anyway, we're done, aren't we? If you like this video, right now, I've got to say before we go, this type of video is for humour purposes only. I'm talking about bands I don't really know much about. I don't like many of these bands. Some of them I do. This is humorous. This is us in our elitist position of liking jazz and prog and all this cool, you know, proper music, poking fun at some mainstream bands. That's all it is, right? And I am reflecting certain attitudes that people of my age have and trying to make you laugh. Please don't get upset at what I do. Because there is a certain fan base here that want me to do this and they enjoy it. So if you did enjoy it, please put a like on it and subscribe and say how much you loved it. So when the negative people come in and they start saying that I am what they say, I can't even repeat it. You want to go into the YouTube folder on here where I've set it. So if anyone says anything offensive, it gets shuffled off. And every now and then when I'm feeling good about myself, I decide to open that folder and I get what people really think about me. Right, and I am everything. I am everything from a Nazi to a soy communist, as one guy keeps selling me. Oh! Like, subscribe. If you want to support me, you can go over to Patreon. The link's down below. If you want to give us a little bit of a tip, you know, and not the sort of tip like don't do the politics, Andy, just stick on the Jazz Fusion. Don't want that tip. A financial tip can go in my PayPal tip jar. I thank you all. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let's switch this bloody thing off.